Picture this. You're having coffee with someone you've known for a few months, maybe longer. The conversation feels warm, natural, and then, almost without thinking, you share something. Something real. Something that took you years to heal from, or something you've never told many people. And the moment it leaves your mouth, you feel it. That small shift. The way their expression changes. The way they suddenly have leverage. You're not imagining this. You're not being paranoid. You're not foolish for sensing that something just shifted in the dynamic between you two. Here's what I want you to understand right from the start. Some people don't listen to learn about you. They listen to collect ammunition. And at this stage of your life, after 60, your peace is not a renewable resource the way it was when you were younger. It's precious. It's earned. And it deserves to be protected with the same intentionality you'd protect your financial security or your health. This isn't about becoming cold. This isn't about building walls so high that real love can't find you. This is about becoming discerning. This is about understanding that vulnerability is a gift, and gifts should only be given to people who've proven they know how to hold them. Some people don't come to know you. They come to exploit what you know. And that changes everything. Before we go further, I want to ask you something directly. If you're feeling that familiar flutter of recognition right now, that sense of, yes, this is what I needed to hear, then stay with this. Like this video. In the comments, tell me one thing you wish you'd protected earlier in your life. I read every single one. And your stories matter. Share this with someone who needs permission to stop oversharing. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the moments when I'm speaking directly to your situation. And if this lands deep, send a super thanks. It tells me you're ready to invest in your own discernment, and I'm here for that. Now here's what this video is going to do for you. I'm going to name 5 specific things that, after 60, you should be extremely cautious about sharing with people who haven't yet proven themselves trustworthy. But more than naming them, I'm going to show you why these particular disclosures hit older women so hard. I'm going to decode the psychology of why someone asks for these things, what they do with them once they have them, and how they use them to maintain control without you even realizing it. And most importantly, I'm going to give you the language, the boundaries, and the protective moves that let you stay warm, open, and discerning all at once. You're going to know exactly what to say, when to pull back, and how to test whether someone deserves deeper access to your life. By the end, you'll have clarity, not cynicism. Clarity. Let's begin. Number 1, your past healing and trauma. Picture someone asking you about your exes, not in that surface way, oh, what was he like? But in that particular way where they're asking with that intense, almost tender curiosity. What hurt you the most? How did that relationship break you? What's the deepest wound you're still working through? And because they're asking with seeming care, because they're leaning in like it matters to them, you tell them. You describe the betrayal. You name the patterns you've worked years in therapy to understand. You explain the specific ways your heart learned not to trust. And here's what you're not seeing in that moment. They are building a map of exactly how to hurt you in those same places. This is where older women get hurt. You've done your healing work. Real, genuine, often expensive, difficult healing. You understand your patterns. You know your wounds. And you've built a version of yourself that's harder to break because you know what breaks you. But when you hand over that map, when you say, here's what betrayal looks like to me, or here's the thing I'm most afraid of happening again, you've just given someone the instruction manual. Let me be very specific about why this happens. When you're over 60, You often carry wisdom that looks like vulnerability. You don't perform invulnerability the way younger women sometimes do. You've survived enough to know that strength includes softness. And that's beautiful. That's one of the greatest gifts of aging. But some people see that softness and they don't see wisdom. They see a target. They see someone who's already been hurt, already been broken, and might be grateful for someone who understands her pain. The psychology here is called intimate vulnerability exploitation, and it works like this. When you share something painful, the person listening has a moment of power. They know something about you that you've made sacred. And then they do one of several things. And they might weaponize it later, bringing up your old wounds when you disagree about something, implying that you're repeating patterns or being irrational because of your past. They might use it to position themselves as your savior, the one person who gets your pain, which creates an imbalanced dynamic where you feel indebted to them for understanding you. Or they might simply store it as leverage, waiting for the moment when they need to control you, and then they deploy your own wound against you. This hits mature women differently because you have something younger women often don't. You have the capacity to see someone's potential for change. You've changed so much yourself that you believe in transformation. You don't want to be the woman who's jaded or unforgiving. You have the patience to see someone's flaws and still believe in them. But that same capacity, that beautiful, hard-won ability to see potential, is exactly what someone with bad intentions will exploit. They'll share a wound of their own, creating a false mirror. They'll say, "You understand me like no one else does." And suddenly, you're not protecting your peace anymore. You're invested in helping them heal, which means you're tolerating behaviors you shouldn't tolerate, overlooking red flags because you're focused on their potential. Here's what you need to do differently. When someone asks about your past wounds or your healing journey, pause. Notice the question. Notice whether it's coming from genuine curiosity or from someone gathering information. A person who actually cares about your well-being will ask differently. They'll say, "I'm sensing this is sensitive. Do you want to talk about it? Or would you rather not?" They'll respect the boundary immediately, but someone who's asking to exploit will keep pushing. They'll say things like, "I thought you trusted me," or "I'm just trying to understand you better," or they'll make you feel like withholding is somehow rejecting them. Here's what to say. "I appreciate that you want to understand me, and I will, over time, share more about my journey. But right now, I'm not at a place where I'm opening that part of my story. I hope you can respect that." Notice that's not cold. That's not rejecting. That's protecting. And if they push back, if they make you feel guilty for that boundary, you've just learned something crucial about them. And here's the deeper protective move. Only share your healing work with people who have already demonstrated that they can handle their own wounds with honesty and accountability. Not perfection, honesty. Someone who can say, "I messed up and here's what I did to make it right," or "I'm struggling with this pattern and I'm working on it." If someone is still in denial about their own damage, they're not safe with yours. This doesn't mean you're weak. This doesn't mean you're too guarded. This means you understand that your healing is sacred and it's not for everyone. Number 2, your financial situation and what you have. Someone asks you casually over dinner, "So what are you doing for retirement?" Or they ask about your house, whether you own it outright, whether you have savings, whether you're worried about money. And because they ask it like they care, like they're thinking about your security, you tell them. You mention that you're comfortable, or you mention that you're worried. You might even give numbers. And what you've just done is handed someone a complete financial assessment of your vulnerability. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. You meet someone, a romantic interest, a new friend, someone who seems genuinely interested in you. Over weeks or months, they ask these questions in different ways. They never ask directly, "How much money do you have?" But they ask about your property. They ask about your kids and whether they're taking care of you. They ask what you're doing with your time. And if you mention travel or hobbies, they suddenly seem very interested in how you're affording those things. They ask about your parents and whether you inherited anything. And slowly, they're building a complete picture of your net worth, your assets, your vulnerabilities, and most importantly, whether you're the kind of person who might help them financially or whether you might be someone who needs help. Why do people do this? Because at 60 and beyond, women often have accumulated assets. You might own a home, you might have retirement savings, you might have inheritances, you might have pension income or Social Security. And some people, not all, but some, view that as an opportunity, not as a part of who you are. The psychology is called financial predation, and it's more common than you might think. Here's how it typically works. A person identifies you as someone with resources. They begin building trust and intimacy, which is real to some degree. They might genuinely enjoy your company, but they're also running a calculation in their mind. They're asking, how much could I get from this person? How much would they give me? How much could I access? And they're testing your financial boundaries to see if you're someone who gives easily, who sacrifices for people you care about, who might be manipulated into financial support. This hits older women specifically because you've worked for your money. You understand the value of it. You've made sacrifices to have security. And that makes you a more attractive target in some ways, because you're less likely to be frivolous with it, which means if someone manages to get you to give them access, it's likely to be a significant amount. Additionally, after a certain age, women often become more generous, more concerned with legacy, more willing to help family or people they care about. That's beautiful. That's generosity. But it's also exploitable. What I need you to understand is that someone who loves you, really loves you, will not ask about your money. They won't need to. And if you offer financial help, they'll be uncomfortable accepting it. They'll say, "I don't want you to do that," or "I need to figure this out myself." They won't justify why they need money. They won't create narratives about temporary hardship. They won't hint at financial struggles and then seem confused when you don't offer to help. Real, trustworthy people don't use financial vulnerability as a lure. Here's what you need to do. First, decide right now what your financial boundaries are. How much would you give a friend if they were in crisis? How much would you lend? What are you genuinely able to do without resentment? And then, this is crucial, do not share those numbers with anyone outside your immediate family and your financial advisors. When someone asks about your finances, your answer is, "I'm okay," or "I'm managing," or "That's something I keep private." That's it. You don't need to elaborate. You don't need to make them feel better about your refusal to discuss it. You don't need to explain that you're being cautious. Just a simple, calm statement. "I don't discuss my finances." And here's what to watch for. Does someone become distant or change their behavior after you refuse to share financial information? Do they start making comments about people with money or rich people problems? Do they suggest that you're being selfish or cold because you won't help them financially? Do they create scenarios where you feel obligated to prove your generosity? These are all massive red flags. A person who respects you will respect your financial privacy immediately without resentment or explanation seeking. The protective move here is simple. Financial secrecy is not coldness. Financial boundaries are not rejection. Your money is the result of your life. It's your security. And you owe it to yourself to protect it as fiercely as you protect your peace. This doesn't mean you're paranoid. This doesn't mean you don't trust people. This means you understand that money is power, and you're not giving power to people who haven't proven they can be trusted with it. Number 3, your relationship struggles or your partner's flaws. You're having a conversation with someone, a friend, a colleague, maybe someone from your social circle, and the conversation turns personal. They ask about your relationship, how things are going with your husband or your partner. And because they're asking with concern, because they seem like they're genuinely interested in your happiness, you tell them. You mention that he's been distant, that he forgot your birthday, that he doesn't listen to you the way he used to, that he's critical sometimes, or that you're worried about his health, or that you're not sure you're still attracted to him. And what you've just done is handed someone a complete vulnerability assessment of your intimate relationship. Let me show you how this weapon gets used. Once someone knows that your partner is struggling with intimacy, or that he's critical, or that he's neglectful, they have information they can use in several ways. They might bond with you over it, becoming your safe person, the one who listens when your partner doesn't. This creates an inappropriate intimacy with them and a comparison dynamic where your partner always comes up short. They might weaponize it later. If you and your partner are arguing, they might bring up things you've confided, using your own disclosures to validate your doubt about him. They might hint to your partner that you've been complaining, creating tension and suspicion in your marriage. Or they might position themselves as the person who truly understands you, creating emotional distance between you and your partner. Why do people do this? Because intimate information about your relationship is currency. It's leverage. It gives them access to the most important relationship in your life, which means they have power over your emotional well-being. Here's the psychology. When you share struggles in your relationship, you're often seeking validation that your feelings are justified. You want someone to confirm that yes, it's unfair that he forgot your birthday. Yes, it's reasonable that you're feeling neglected. And when someone validates those feelings, it creates an intense emotional bond. You feel understood. You feel less alone in your struggle. And that feels so good after months or years of feeling unheard by your partner, that you keep sharing, keep seeking that validation, keep deepening the relationship with this external person. But here's what's happening psychologically. You're creating a triangle. Your partner on one side, this person on the other, and you in the middle, increasingly comparing the two. And the person you're confiding in always wins that comparison because they're not living with you. They're not tired. They're not dealing with the mundane realities of partnership. They're the fantasy of being truly understood, which is intoxicating. This hits older women in a particular way because you've often spent decades in your primary relationship. You know its rhythms. You know its problems. You've probably worked through some things already. And sometimes there's a fatigue that sets in, the sense that this is just how it is, or I've made my peace with this. When someone comes along and validates your unspoken frustrations, it can feel like air after drowning. But that validation comes with a price. They've now positioned themselves as closer to you, in some ways, than your own partner. Additionally, older women sometimes minimize their own needs in relationships. You've learned to be accommodating. You've learned that relationships require compromise. And you might not recognize that what started as reasonable accommodation has become a pattern of self-abandonment. When someone validates that, when they say, "You deserve better," it can trigger a cascade of doubt about your entire relationship. Doubt that might have been manageable if you hadn't been given external validation for it. Here's what you need to do. Make a rule. You do not discuss your partner's flaws with anyone outside your marriage except a therapist, a pastor, or a very close family member. And even then, with restraint. On these, when someone asks how your relationship is, you can say, "It's good," or "We're working through some things," or simply, "That's something I keep between us." And if they push, "Oh, come on, you can tell me." That's your sign that they're fishing, and you don't fish with them. The protective move is this. If you have a genuine concern about your relationship, you address it with your partner first, then with a professional therapist if needed. You do not process it with friends or social circles. The reason is not because your relationship is perfect, it's not, but because once you've shared a negative about your partner with someone outside the relationship, you've changed the dynamic. That person will never unhear it. They'll forever view your partner through that lens. Oh, and you've complicated your own ability to move forward, because you'll wonder if they judge you for staying, or if they're silently rooting for your relationship to fail so they can be right about him. When you're tempted to share, pause and ask yourself, what am I really seeking? Am I looking for validation that my feelings are justified? If so, I can sit with that feeling. Am I looking for perspective? That's what a therapist is for. Am I looking for someone to tell me what to do? That's a sign I need to make a decision myself, not crowdsource it. Am I looking to feel less alone? That loneliness belongs in your marriage. It's telling you something, and it needs to be addressed there, not externalized. And here's the deeper protective truth. Your relationship struggles are not entertainment or bonding material. They're sacred. They belong to you and your partner. You don't owe anyone the play-by-play of your intimacy or your disappointments. Protecting that privacy isn't coldness. It's protecting your marriage from external interference. This doesn't mean you're isolated. This doesn't mean you can't reach out when you're struggling. It means you reach out strategically to people who have proven they can hold your information with discretion and integrity, and you don't use venting as a substitute for real work in your relationship. Number 4, your fears about aging, health, and mortality. Someone asks you, with gentle concern, how are you feeling about getting older? Or they notice something. Maybe you mentioned a health concern or you made a self-deprecating comment about your appearance, and they lean in with that particular kind of vulnerability. They say, I'm scared too, or I understand that fear. And suddenly you're talking about it. You're sharing your real fears. That you're worried about becoming invisible. That you're scared of dying alone. That you're anxious about your health. That you sometimes lie awake at night thinking about mortality. That you're afraid you're running out of time. And what you've just done is handed someone access to your deepest existential vulnerability. Here's how this gets weaponized. Once someone knows that you fear being alone, they can position themselves as your salvation from that loneliness. They can create a dynamic where you're grateful for their presence, where you tolerate things you shouldn't tolerate because you're terrified of losing them. Once someone knows that you're anxious about your health, they can use health concerns as a reason you should do what they want, or they can subtly undermine your confidence in your body and your capabilities. Once someone knows that you're afraid of mortality, they can use that to create urgency around spending time with them, giving them money, or making decisions that don't serve you. Why does this happen? Because existential fears are powerful. They cut to the core of who we are. And when someone has access to those fears, they have access to your will. Let me decode the psychology here. As we age, we become more aware of our finitude. This is actually healthy. It can clarify what matters and help us prioritize. But it can also create a vulnerability. We become more willing to sacrifice now for the promise of not being alone later. We become more willing to compromise on standards because we're conscious of time passing. We become more willing to accept half measures and vague promises because at least something is happening. We become more available to people who position themselves as solutions to our fears. Predatory people exploit this beautifully. They don't say, I'm going to use your fear of mortality against you. Instead, they say things like, we should spend as much time together as we can. We never know what tomorrow brings. Creating urgency that pressures you to move faster in a relationship than you otherwise would. They say, you're so young for your age. which validates your fear of invisibility and makes you grateful and more willing to please. They say, "I'll be here for you as you get older," positioning themselves as your solution to aging alone, which creates a dynamic where you're indebted and they have ongoing power. This hits older women in a very specific way because you've likely already experienced loss. You've probably lost parents. You might have lost friends. You've watched peers get sick. In a way younger women don't. That time is real and finite. And that knowledge is beautiful and clarifying, but it also makes you more vulnerable to someone who promises to make that finitude less scary. Additionally, there's often a cultural narrative that women over 60 become invisible, that your value decreases, that you're in the twilight. Some of this is real. Society does treat older women differently, and some of it is internalized. A story you've been told your whole life about what it means to age as a woman. When someone comes along and makes you feel visible, when they act like you're still attractive, still vital, still worth pursuing, it can feel so validating that you become willing to overlook other things that don't serve you. You become willing to forgive inconsistency because at least you're being seen. Here's what you need to do. First, decide right now that your fears about aging and mortality are not topics for casual conversation. These are the deepest parts of yourself, and they belong in private, with a therapist, with a spiritual advisor, with a journal, with God or the universe, or whatever framework you use. You do not process existential dread with people who are still building trust with you. When someone tries to go there, when they start asking about your fears or your health or your mortality, you can acknowledge them with warmth, but redirect. You can say, "I appreciate your concern. I'm doing well, and I have support for the deeper questions." You can say, "That's something I'm working through with my therapist," or "That's between me and God," or simply, "That's not something I'm open about right now." And then you change the subject. Here's what to watch for. Does someone use your fears as a reason for you to spend time with them? Let's not waste time. Let's be together now. Does someone compliment you specifically on things that counter your stated fears? You're so beautiful for your age. Or, you're not like other older women. Does someone create a sense of urgency around decisions or commitments based on the fact that life is short? These are all manipulations leveraging your existential vulnerability. The protective move is this. Your fears are real and valid, and they deserve to be processed, but not with people who are trying to build intimacy with you. Real love doesn't exploit your mortality fears to rush you into decisions. Real love says, take your time. I'm not going anywhere, so you don't have to move faster than feels right to you. And here's the deeper truth. The fear of being alone and the fact of being alone are not the same thing. You might age alone at some points, and that's not a tragedy. You might face mortality eventually, and that's not a failure. If these are human experiences, what matters is that you face them with your own dignity, your own integrity, and your own sense of meaning, not in desperate bargaining with someone who's leveraging your fear. This doesn't mean you're cold. This doesn't mean you don't have fears. This means you understand that your existential vulnerability is sacred, and it's not a bargaining chip in relationships. I need you to understand something crucial. Because we're at a turning point in this conversation, and I need you to really let this land. Everything we've talked about so far, your healing, your money, your relationship, your fears, these are all windows into your control. And what I'm describing is a pattern. It's not just about individual secrets. It's about the systematic way that people can use incremental knowledge of your vulnerabilities to maintain control. This is called intermittent vulnerability exploitation. And it works like this. Someone slowly, over time, gathers small pieces of information about who you are, what hurts you, what scares you, what you want. And then they use those pieces, sometimes consciously, sometimes not, to keep you slightly off balance, slightly unsure of yourself, slightly grateful for their attention and understanding. They don't weaponize all at once. They do it in small ways. A comment here, a knowing look there, a moment where they're right about something you confided and you feel validated, so you share a little more. And before you realize it, they have a complete map of how to keep you attached to them through leverage. This isn't about blaming you. This isn't about saying you're foolish for trusting. This is about awareness. This is about understanding the mechanism so you can see it coming. Because here's what's true. Once you understand how the pattern works, you can interrupt it. You can notice when someone is gathering information. You can feel the shift when they're building leverage. You can recognize the moment when they're starting to use what they know against you, even in small ways. And you can make a choice about whether to continue the relationship or to step back. The goal is not paranoia. The goal is clarity. The goal is to understand that discernment is a protection mechanism, not a flaw. The goal is to know the difference between healthy openness and dangerous vulnerability, because that difference is everything. Let's continue. Number 5. Your loneliness, your need for connection, and your desire to be loved. This is the deepest one, so I want to take time here. Picture this. You're at a point in your life where you're feeling the weight of solitude. Maybe you're single. Maybe you're in a relationship but feeling unseen. Maybe you've had losses, deaths, divorces, distance that have left a particular kind of ache. And someone notices. Someone sees that you're lonely. And instead of judgment, they offer companionship. They text, they call, they show up, they listen. They make you feel like you're the most interesting person in the room. And because it feels so good to be seen after a long time of not being seen, you tell them what you need. You say, "I've been so lonely." You talk about how much you miss having someone to share life with. You describe what kind of love you're looking for. You paint a picture of what would make you feel whole. And you do this because they're asking, and because they're listening, and because finally, someone seems to understand what you've been carrying, and what you've just done is given someone a complete blueprint of how to manipulate you. Let me show you how this operates in real life. Someone meets you. Within the first few weeks, they're remarkably attuned to what you need. You mention that you feel unseen, and suddenly they're seeing you, really seeing you. You mention that you want deeper conversation, and they engage you in midnight talks where you feel truly known. You mention that you're lonely and they're constantly available. They text throughout the day. They remember small details about your life. They prioritize you, and it feels like a miracle. It feels like exactly what you've been searching for. But here's what's actually happening. They're mirroring exactly what you said you need. They're not being authentic. They're being strategic. And the reason they know exactly how to do this is because you told them. You gave them the instructions for how to capture you emotionally. In relationships, this is called love bombing, and it's a specific manipulation tactic. It works like this. A person identifies someone who is lonely or emotionally vulnerable. They notice exactly what kind of attention and affection that person is hungry for. And then they provide it in massive quantities, very quickly. They are perfect for a few weeks or months. And they are attentive in ways that feel almost miraculously aligned with what you've always wanted. And by the time they slow down, by the time they reveal that they can't actually maintain that level of attentiveness, or that they were being inauthentic, you're already bonded. You're already invested. You're already telling yourself that maybe you misunderstood, or that this is normal, or that the beginning was real even if they can't maintain it now. Why does this work so well on older women specifically? Because you've waited, you've been patient, you've done your own work, you've healed from past relationships, and you don't want to be the woman who's bitter or hardened by experience. You want to believe in love. You want to be open. And someone who offers what you've been longing for feels like a gift from the universe, and not a manipulation. Additionally, there's often a scarcity narrative around love after 60. You might have internalized or had reinforced by culture that your window for romantic partnership is closing, that you should be grateful for attention, that you're not in a position to be selective because time is running out. And when someone comes along and seems interested, there can be a tendency to move faster, to invest more quickly, to overlook inconsistencies because you don't want to miss an opportunity. But here's what's crucial. Real love doesn't need your loneliness to work. Real love doesn't depend on you being emotionally hungry. Real love is consistent, not just at the beginning. Real love is authentic, not perfectly aligned with your stated needs. Real love is sometimes boring, or real love sometimes disappoints you in small ways because it's real, not curated. Here's what you need to do. Make a commitment right now. You will not discuss your loneliness, your need for partnership, or your desire to be loved with anyone who is trying to become your romantic partner or your close friend. You can be warm. You can be open. You can enjoy connection. But you will not narrate your emotional needs to someone who might use that narration to manipulate you. When someone asks, "Do you get lonely?" you don't say, "Yes, I get very lonely and I've been alone for so long, and I miss having someone to share life with." Instead, you say, "Sometimes, like everyone," and you move on. When someone asks, "What are you looking for in a relationship?" you don't paint a detailed picture of your ideal partner and your deepest desires. And you say, "I'm looking for someone kind and consistent," and you see how they respond to that simple standard. If they become more attentive after you've described your emotional needs, if they seem to shift into a version of themselves that perfectly meets those needs, you pause. You notice that. You don't immediately conclude they're manipulating you, but you do maintain a degree of caution. Here's what to watch for. Does someone seem to transform into exactly what you said you were looking for? Does their attentiveness feel almost orchestrated, like they're hitting marks you described? Do they use phrases you used to describe what you need? You said you wanted someone who really listens, so I'm here to listen. Or you mentioned you were lonely, so I'm making sure you're never alone. These are signs that they're mirroring your vulnerabilities, not authentically connecting. The protective move is this. You slow down. You let connection develop naturally without narrating your needs into existence. You observe whether someone is consistently kind or only kind when they're earning something from you. You notice whether they're interested in you as you actually are, or only in the parts of you that need them. You test the relationship under different circumstances, when they're tired, when they're stressed, when there's no immediate payoff for being attentive. Real people show up imperfectly in all circumstances. Manipulators show up perfectly only when it serves them. And here's the thing I need you to really hear. Your loneliness is not your fault. Your desire for love and connection is not a weakness. Your openness to partnership is not foolish, but your loneliness is also not an emergency that requires you to accept the first person who seems to understand it. Your need for love is not permission for someone to exploit that need. Your desire for connection is not a reason to abandon discernment. The healthiest relationships develop slowly, with consistency, with people who are willing to be honest about their own struggles, rather than perfect mirrors of your needs. The people worth building a life with don't need you to be lonely to keep you close. They're close because they choose to be. This doesn't mean you're unlovable without them. This means you're whole on your own, and a partner adds to your life rather than completes it. So let's bring this all together. What we've talked about today, your healing, your money, your relationship, your fears, your loneliness. These are the 5 deepest things that you should protect fiercely, especially with people who are new in your life or haven't yet proven their trustworthiness. But I want to give you the simplest possible test for whether someone deserves access to these deeper parts of you. Here it is. Can they sit with your vulnerability without trying to fix it, exploit it, or use it to make themselves more important to you? A trustworthy person, when you share something difficult, doesn't immediately have a solution. They don't say, well, here's what you should do. They listen, they validate. They ask if you want perspective or just to be heard. They hold what you've shared with the same care you held it. They don't bring it back up later to prove a point. They don't weaponize it. They don't use it to keep you obligated to them. They just hold it. Respectfully. Quietly. That's how you know. Here are the protective moves we've talked about, summarized simply. When it comes to your healing and your trauma, you share only with people who've proven they can handle their own wounds with honesty. When it comes to your finances, you discuss them only with your financial advisors and your closest family. When it comes to your relationship, you keep those conversations between you and your partner, and with a professional if needed. When it comes to your fears about aging and mortality, you process those in private, with reflection, not with people who are building intimacy with you. And when it comes to your loneliness and your desires, you notice whether someone is listening to understand or listening to strategize how to become indispensable to you. In all of this, consistency is your teacher. Real people are consistently kind. Real people show up the same way when no one's watching. Real people are honest about their own struggles, which means they're not trying to be perfect for you. Real people respect your boundaries immediately, without resentment or explanation seeking. Real people earn your trust over time, not all at once. Pay attention to what you feel in the presence of someone. Not just the good feelings. We can manufacture those. Notice the feeling underneath. Does this person make you feel more solid, more sure of yourself? Or do you feel slightly off balance around them? Like you're always adjusting, always explaining, yet always trying to get them to understand you? Real people make you feel more you. False people make you feel like you have to become someone else to keep them. And here's the thing about discernment. It's not cynicism. Cynicism says nobody is trustworthy. Discernment says, I will be open to the people who prove they're trustworthy and cautious with everyone else. Discernment is warm. Discernment is generous. But discernment has standards. Discernment says, I see you, and I'm watching to see if you honor what I've shared. I'm watching to see if you're consistent. I'm watching to see if you make my life better, or just more complicated. You are at a beautiful, powerful stage of your life. You have wisdom that younger women are still building. You have experience that can't be rushed. You have a sense of what matters and what doesn't. That's your superpower. Don't give it away to people who don't deserve it. Don't invest your deepest self in people who are still proving themselves. Your time is valuable. Your energy is precious. Your heart is not a playground. These aren't cold statements. They're statements of self-respect. They're statements of a woman who understands her own worth and is willing to protect it. And here's the final thing I want to say. The most important relationship you have is with yourself. The relationship with yourself is the one that lasts forever. The relationship with yourself is the one that has to hold you through every loss, every disappointment, every change. When you protect your boundaries, when you refuse to share your deepest vulnerabilities with people who haven't earned them, you're not being cold. You're taking care of the most important person in your life. You're saying to yourself, I matter enough to protect. My peace matters. My heart matters. And I'm going to be the one who guards it. Trust your intuition about people. Your body knows. You've lived enough to have calibrated instincts. When something feels off, it is. When someone feels safe, they are. When you feel yourself adjusting or explaining or trying harder, pay attention to that. That's information. That's you telling yourself something important. And if you find yourself in a situation where you've already shared too much, where you've already given someone access to your vulnerabilities, you have a choice in the next moment. You can continue on the path you're on, or you can step back. It's never too late to create distance. It's never too late to stop feeding information to someone who's using it against you. It's never too late to choose peace over connection if that connection is costly. Walk away from confusion without guilt. Real love doesn't confuse you. Real love doesn't require you to protect yourself from the person who supposedly loves you. If you find yourself constantly uncertain, constantly adjusting, constantly questioning whether someone has your best interests at heart, that's clarity disguised as doubt. That's you knowing something before your mind has fully admitted it. Trust that. You are worthy of real love. Not the kind that requires you to abandon yourself. Not the kind that depends on your loneliness or your fear or your need to be seen. The kind that is consistent. The kind that is honest. I'm the kind that makes you feel more like yourself, not less. And if you're not there yet, that's okay too. Real love is worth waiting for. It's worth holding your standards for. It's worth protecting yourself until you find it. Because the alternative, settling for someone who exploits your vulnerabilities, costs far more than solitude ever could. Like this video, if something here struck deep. In the comments, tell me one boundary you're going to set this week. Tell me one thing you're going to stop sharing with people who haven't earned it. Tell me how it feels to give yourself permission to be protective instead of apologizing for it. I read every comment, and I want to know your story. Share this video with someone who needs permission to stop overgiving, stop oversharing, and start honoring themselves. I tell her that protecting her peace is not selfish. Tell her that discernment is a gift. Subscribe if you're ready to invest in your own clarity, to build a life where your boundaries are non-negotiable and your peace is protected. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the moments when I'm speaking directly to what you're going through. And if this landed deep, send a super thanks. It tells me you're ready to be fierce about protecting yourself, and I'm here for that. I'm here to remind you, again and again, that you matter. You matter. Your peace matters. Your standards matter. The way you feel about someone, when something feels off, when someone feels right, that matters. Trust yourself. You've earned the right to.